in that city that seemed to have been brushed straight out of a painting, where every street told its own story and every corner held the secrets of generations. Anthony's family restaurant stood. It wasn't just another establishment in town. It was a real landmark, a living piece of local history, where past and present met in a warm embrace. The walls, adorned with old photographs and kitchen utensils that belonged to Anthony's grandparents, spoke of a time when every meal was an act of love and communion. The aroma that wafted through the air was an irresistible invitation, a mixture of spices and nostalgia, of sauces bubbling slowly on the fire, promising not only to satisfy hunger, but also to warm the soul. For the town's inhabitants, crossing the threshold of the restaurant was like returning to the warmth of an ancestral home, where every dish served was a story, every taste a memory. It was in this setting, full of echoes of the past and invisible ties that bound the community together, that Brooke made her entrance. With her curious eyes and easy smile, she seemed to absorb every detail, every line and texture that made up the restaurant's rustic and welcoming atmosphere. An architect by profession, she had a special appreciation for the beauty that lay in simplicity, in the authenticity of things that, although ordinary, carried within them a unique essence, a story to be told. Brooke's family, who were already regulars there, introduced her to this little universe that Anthony and his parents had created with such zeal. The visits became more frequent, and what began as an appreciation of the local cuisine evolved into something deeper, in conversations that sometimes lasted until after closing time. Anthony and Brooke discovered affinities that went beyond a taste for traditional dishes or the history of the city. The smiles exchanged across the table, amid the buzz of other conversations and the clink of cutlery, were preludes to a connection that deepened with each meeting. Anthony, with his passion for family heritage and his love of cooking, found in Brooke an equally passionate soul, but for lines, shapes, and spaces. Together, they explored not only the flavors of the restaurant, but also the contours of a relationship that, day by day, became richer and more promising. Anthony, at 39, was the embodiment of commitment and dedication. His bond with the family restaurant transcended simply running a business. It was the continuity of a legacy, the preservation of a history that was intertwined with the very roots of the city. The restaurant, more than an enterprise, was the beating heart of his family, where every recipe, every dish served, was a chapter in a saga that spanned generations. This deep sense of belonging and honor shaped Anthony's character, making him a man of solid values, whose identity was intrinsically linked to tradition and the memory of his ancestors. Brooke, on the other hand, with her 33 vibrant years, brought with her a lightness and brightness that defied the monotony of the days. Her passion for architecture was more than a profession. It was an expression of her love of life and of all that was beautiful and harmonious. Her free spirit made her dance in the lines and curves of the spaces she created, infusing life and emotion into concrete and glass structures. Brooke saw the world through a lens of infinite possibilities, where every building, every space, had the potential to tell a story, evoke feelings, and create connections. When the love between Anthony and Brooke blossomed, it was as if two separate universes collided, creating a bright new constellation in the firmament of their lives. The love that grew between them was both a discovery and a revelation, a journey together that explored not only the depth of their feelings but also the richness of their differences. Anthony's passion for tradition and family legacy found an echo in Brooke's creative and innovative soul, creating a harmonious dialogue between the past and the future, between the eternal and the ephemeral. Marriage came as the natural celebration of this love which, despite its unlikely origins, proved to be deep and resilient. It was a shared promise to walk together, to build a life together where the dreams and realities of each would intertwine, creating a robust and colorful fabric. The union of Anthony and Brooke was not only the union of two hearts, but also the fusion of two worldviews, two souls who, despite their differences, found in diversity a source of strength and inspiration. Thus, the happily ever after they sealed that day was no mere fairy tale phrase, but a tangible promise, a conscious choice to face together the challenges and joys that life had in store for them. It was the beginning of a shared adventure, a mutual commitment to nurture and cultivate the love they had discovered, allowing it to grow and flourish, rooted in the rich soil of their individual histories, but reaching for the heavens together. As time progressed, fate, in its capricious nature, began to weave a new chapter in Anthony and Brooke's story, one that neither of them could have foreseen. The health of Anthony's parents, until then pillars of strength and resilience, began to decline with alarming speed, leaving them unable to handle the reins of the restaurant. That was more than a business. It was a symbol of their family heritage. This misfortune placed an immense burden on Anthony's shoulders, a responsibility he accepted with a mixture of honor and trepidation, aware of what was at stake. The restaurant, with its roots deeply rooted in the history of the family and the city, required almost Herculean dedication to maintain its essence and quality. Every decision, every choice of ingredient, every dish that came out of the kitchen carried with it the tradition of generations. For Anthony, taking full control of the restaurant meant more than simply running an establishment. It meant preserving a legacy, keeping alive the flame of culinary passion that had been passed down from generation to generation. As the days went by, the long working hours began to pile up. Every minute of Anthony's day meticulously allocated to meeting the restaurant's countless demands. The mornings were consumed by planning and preparation. The afternoons unfolded in a whirlwind of activities that ranged from supervising the kitchen to providing personalized service to customers, many of whom he considered to be part of his own family. The evenings, which had previously been reserved for moments of quiet and connection with Brooke, were now swallowed up by the need to manage the team, close the day's accounts and plan for the next day. This relentless pace left little room for life. Outside the walls of the restaurant, Brooke, who had always been a beacon of support and understanding, began to feel the weight of Anthony's absence. The conversations that had once flowed freely, full of shared dreams and plans for the future, were now brief interludes, often interrupted by the incessant demands of the restaurant. The bed, which had once been a sanctuary of intimacy and connection for the couple, became a silent reminder of the growing distance between them. In this whirlwind of responsibilities, Anthony struggled to keep his balance, torn between his duty to his family heritage and his love for his wife. The irony of his situation did not escape him. In his quest to preserve the legacy that defined his identity, he ran the risk of losing the love that gave his life color and meaning. Fate, with its unpredictable designs, had put the bond that united Anthony and Brooke to a severe test, challenging them to find a way to keep the flame of their love burning amidst the storms of life. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the feeling of isolation and helplessness began to weigh on Brooke, like a cold shadow that lengthened with the evening. The house, once full of laughter and conversation, now echoed with the silence of absence. Brooke, with her vibrant nature and passion for life, felt more and more like a plant deprived of sunlight, gradually withering in the dark. It was against this backdrop of growing loneliness that Brooke decided to turn to tennis, not just as a physical activity, but as an outlet, a way of filling in the gaps left by long hours without company. The sport, with its dynamics and energy, offered a welcome counterpoint to the quietness of her routine. The tennis court became her refuge, a place where she could release the threads of tension and, for a few hours, forget the coldness that had settled into her home. Jason, the young tennis teacher, with his easy smile and confident demeanor, represented everything that was missing from Brooke's life at that moment. His natural charisma and ability to conduct the game, with a mixture of rigor and lightness, quickly captured Brooke's attention. But it was his ability to listen, to truly pay attention to Brooke's words and feelings, that proved to be the balm for the wounds opened by loneliness. Initially, Brooke remained cautious, aware of the limits that separated a teacher-student relationship from something more personal. However, Jason's constant attention, his ability to make her feel seen and heard, gradually eroded the barriers she had erected. The conversations that started out focused on tennis soon expanded into other territories, sharing laughs, dreams, and, inevitably, the frustrations that Brooke carried in her heart. What was born as a friendship based on mutual admiration and the comfort of companionship soon began to take on a more intimate tone. Jason's hints and subtle flirtations found fertile ground. In Brooke's emotional neediness, and the seeds of a forbidden romance were planted. Away from prying eyes, in the discreet shadows offered by the tennis court, words of affection began to be exchanged. Each secret meeting sprinkled with whispered promises and furtive touches. Anthony, for his part, was so immersed in the turbulent waters of his responsibilities that Brooke's transformation went unnoticed. The man who had once been able to read every nuance of expression on her face could now barely perceive the coldness that had settled between them. A silent chasm that was growing, fueled by absence and betrayal. The change in the air was palpable. An internal winter descending on the home that had once been filled with warmth and love. After months of exhausting working hours and endless nights dedicated to the restaurant, Anthony finally found a respite. The hiring of a competent manager and a stronger team allowed him to breathe. A sigh of relief, confident that his family's legacy was in good hands. It was time to redirect his energy to the place that had been neglected for too long, home, with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Anthony crossed the threshold of his home, longing to reconnect with Brooke and rekindle the flame of love that had once lit up every corner of that dwelling. However, what he found was a deafening silence and an emptiness that seemed to echo off the walls. Brooke, the vibrant and passionate woman with whom he had exchanged vows of eternal love, now seemed a shadow of herself. A stranger moving indifferently through the spaces they had once shared with joy. The emotional distance was palpable. A cold chasm stretching between them, filled with unspoken words and averted glances. The disconnection was so deep that Anthony could barely recognize the life they had built together, driven by a mixture of confusion, suspicion and a heart that broke every day. He made the agonizing decision to seek answers outside the confines of his home. The choice to turn to a detective was not an easy one. It was a tacit acknowledgement that trust, the pillar on which their marriage was built, was now in ruins. But the need to understand, to know what had corrupted the love they had once promised to nurture, overcame any hesitation. The detective's findings fell on Anthony like an avalanche, taking his breath away and shattering any vestige of hope he might still harbor. Brooke, his beloved wife, had become entangled in a secret romance with Jason, the tennis teacher, whose superficial charm and slickness had seduced not only Brooke, but also 3 other students. It was a betrayal on multiple levels. A web of lies and deceit that stretched far beyond what Anthony could have imagined. The revelation of Brooke's infidelity was a devastating blow. A deep wound that questioned not only his judgment, but also the essence of what they had shared. The fact that Jason had cheated on other women only added insult to injury, painting a portrait of a man whose lack of scruples and respect for other people's feelings knew few bounds. Faced with this harsh reality, Anthony found himself at a crossroads, each leading to an uncertain future. The pain of betrayal and the weight of a broken heart threatened to overwhelm him, but amidst the storm of emotions, a spark of determination began to burn. It was the start of an arduous, perhaps lonely, but necessary journey to heal the open wounds and rebuild his life on new foundations. Armed with an undeniable body of evidence, Anthony adopted a stance that was a mixture of unwavering resolve and calculated coolness. The discovery of the betrayal had not only wounded him deeply, but had also ignited a flame of justice within him. As he unveiled Jason's intricate veil of lies and betrayals, Anthony watched Brooke's despair transform. The promises of eternal love that Jason had whispered to Brooke, wrapping her in a cloak of false security and affection, crumbled under the weight of the truth. Brooke, who had placed her trust and hope in this clandestine love, saw her world turned upside down. Confronted with the harsh reality that Jason's pledges of love were nothing more than skillful manipulations designed to seduce and deceive, Brooke's shock and pain were palpable. A mixture of disbelief and anguish as she realized that she had become yet another victim in Jason's web who, as it turned out, had a disturbing predilection for committed women. The revelation not only exposed Jason's true face, but also forced Brooke to confront the vulnerability of her own heart and the fragility of her choices. In the midst of the emotional storm, the reality that Jason's promises were nothing more than empty words, echoing the lies he had told others before her, was a cruel blow. Brooke, now stripped of the illusions she had sheltered under, found herself in a whirlwind of regret and self-questioning. Anthony, for his part, while playing the role of bearer of devastating truths, found no pleasure in Brooke's pain. Seeing the woman with whom he had shared so many dreams crumble in the face of the reality of betrayal was a sight that broke his heart even more. However, he knew that revealing the truth was necessary, not only to unmask Jason, but also to provide a path to healing and, perhaps, redemption. The final chapter of this painful story was not marked by triumph or revenge, but by a silent recognition of the deep scars left by lies and deceit. For Brooke, it was the beginning of a long process of reflection and reconstruction, a journey to rediscover her own strength and value away from the shadows of betrayal. For Anthony, it was the bitter conclusion of a chapter in his life, marked by loss and pain, but also by the determination to move on, seeking the light beyond the darkness of deception.